Hey all, here at OS Reviews. Today we're taking an interesting unboxing look at a refurbished iPhone X here in 2022. So time really does fly, and it's hard to believe that the iPhone X was released back in September of 2017. So this is a smartphone that's now nearing 5 years old. On one hand, because the aesthetics of iPhones haven't changed that much, we still have almost a very similar design on even the latest iPhones, at least from the front. And whether you're a fan of Apple or not, one thing that you have to admit is their software support tends to beat the competition. I mean, on the Android world, you'll hardly find a smartphone which is still receiving the latest software updates from the official company 5 years down the road. The closest that you'll come to that might be a Google Pixel. In this particular case, this is a Pixel 3 XL released in 2018, and it's technically still on the latest version of Android, that is Android 12, but now that it's 4 years old, it will stop receiving any future OS updates, at least officially from Google, whereas this iPhone X, again, is even older, but it will still continue to receive the latest iOS updates and OS versions at least for another year or two to come. At the time, though, was for sure a very controversial device because it was extremely expensive. At a retail cost of $1,000, it kind of normalized the trend of ultra premium smartphone pricing, which unfortunately has stuck with us ever since. But as a smartphone which is still fully functional, like I said, will continue to receive updates in the foreseeable future, you can now pick up a refurbished iPhone X, typically in the sub $300 price range, which now puts it more into kind of the mid-tier, if not getting into the budget territory gradually. And I'll just quickly point out that I got this unit from a site called Heka. They sell different refurbished phones as well as new devices as well, of course. Cosmetic condition is described as like new, so I'm excited to see what it actually looks like. Apple has never been really about kind of outbeating the Android side in terms of pure specs, but because of their OS optimization, it tends to run pretty well even on technically less powerful hardware. The iPhone X rocks the Bionic A11 chipset, which is a hexa-core, 6-core processor clocked at 2.4 gigahertz, which of course we'll take a look at how it's held up and how it performs today in our full retro revisited review, which will be coming out later. The phone is coupled with 3 gigabytes of RAM and also packs a 5.8-inch OLED display, which is HDR10 certified. It has over 600 nits in terms of brightness. We get a SIM ejector tool, but it looks like with this particular refurbished unit, we don't actually see a charger in terms of a brick or a cable included, but it uses a very standard lightning cable that we'll often have lying around. If not, they can be just picked up for $1 or $2. Not the biggest issue in the world, and again, similar to modern Apple packaging, super minimalistic. Anyways, returning to the phone, we do have, it looks like, film protectors both on the rear and the front, which are protected by Corning Gorilla Glass. And in terms of the form factor, I have to say that at 5.8 inches, this is pretty compact. If we just do a very quick size comparison with something like the aforementioned Google Pixel 3 XL, which has a over 6.2-inch display, you can tell the difference there in size, but also you can tell that what's impressive about iPhone's kind of first generation device with this type of design is that the bezels in terms of the chin at the bottom is fairly small, and again, they achieve this using the OLED technology. They're able to bend the ribbon cable, and yes, it still feels as premium as ever since it is a glass sandwich coupled with a stainless steel frame that feels just a little bit more rigid than aluminum, for instance. It's super shiny, so on the edge here we have access to the volume rocker, there's that mute switch, nothing else on the very top. The bottom here houses the loudspeaker, microphone, and lightning port for charging and data, and the iPhone X does also support Qi wireless charging. There's also that oversized power key, which is very tactile and clicky, along with the SIM slot. Flanked by the dual lens setup, which composes of a 12 megapixel primary sensor and a second 12 megapixel telephoto, which has 2 times optical zoom. So really inspecting the phone closely here, I have to say that for a refurbished condition, it looks pretty much like new. I'm not seeing any scratches at all, even pointing it at the light. It glimmers and shines. Same thing in terms of all of the accents. I don't really even see any scratches going on, just of course smudges from my fingerprints because of how shiny it is. Again, on the front, you don't see any scratches at all, luckily, no dings or really any marks with the display. It looks perfectly new and pristine, which is excellent. And before we kind of go further into the setup. Again, just a quick size comparison. Here it is next to something like a older generation iPhone that still has that forehead and chin. You can really tell the difference. So the body of this iPhone is essentially the same size as something like an iPhone 7, 8, or 6 even, and really it's just filling that space up with more of the display. Everything can be easily reached. I'm happy to see that the display, even though it's an OLED panel, also looks to be in pristine condition, has True Tone technology to automatically adjust the color depending on your surroundings, and you see that IR sensor at the top with a 3D face unlock also activating. There are no kind of dead pixels or burn-ins at all on this refurbished condition unit. Now, what's pretty thoughtful about Apple's software here is in terms of the setup, they've also made it quite easy. If you have an existing iOS device, whether it's an iPhone or iPad, you can kind of bring it closer to this device and it will detect that. Essentially, we just completed our Face ID setup. This phone does still have 3D touch as well, which has been unfortunately stripped away in newer iPhones, pressing down a little bit harder to access contextual menus on certain programs. So it still has access to all the services, of course, being fully up to date, whether it's Siri, whether it's wireless payment services, NFC, GPS, of course, all those things are built on in. The only thing that you don't get, of course, is a fingerprint scanner or Touch ID, because that's been replaced by the Face ID at the very top, which does still work in the dark, but again, these days, because we have masks that we're wearing, perhaps due to COVID, it does make it not quite as reliable as a fingerprint scanner. And again, the primary camera there in terms of selfies is 7 megapixels. It does record up to full HD quality video. And otherwise, this phone does have stereo speakers. The earpiece acts as one speaker, and the bottom there acts as the second. And voila, there we have it. So the phone has now been fully set up. It does still unlock relatively quickly. Accuracy is going to be decent, and indeed, we do have all of our essentially apps that we've used on their other iPhone. Now, it is worth pointing out that, again, this iPhone 10 comes in 2 variants in terms of memory. You can pick between a 64 gig base version or 256 gigs. So there's not really anything in between, like 128 to pick from, and iPhones never have micro SD card support, so do keep that in mind. So that's Force Touch there, pressing hard. Here, the battery health we can see is at 100%. So indeed, this refurbished iPhone also should function as new in terms of the battery charge status. So stay tuned for more coming soon, but for now that's been our unboxing and first look at the iPhone 10 here in 2022, at least a refurbished unit. Overall, at condition at least, I am pretty satisfied here on first impressions with this refurbished unit. And again, getting to a price point now that's definitely more attractive. You can check out more details if you're interested, and again, stay posted for our full throwback review coming soon. For now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews.